Laci Denise Peterson was born on May 4, 1975, and raised in California's Central Valley. Friends and family described her as warm, optimistic, and deeply devoted to the people in her life. She graduated from California Polytechnic State University, San Luis Obispo, where she met Scott Peterson in 1994. The two married in August 1997 and settled in Modesto, California. By 2002, Laci was 27 years old and 8 months pregnant with the couple's first child, a son they planned to name Connor. Laci worked as a substitute teacher and later focused on preparing for motherhood. Those close to her recalled that she looked forward to becoming a parent and often spoke about future plans for her family. The Petersons lived in a modest home on Covina Avenue in a quiet Modesto neighborhood. Neighbors described the area as peaceful and close-knit. Laci was known for walking the family dog, a golden retriever named Mackenzie, in the mornings and keeping in touch regularly with her mother, Sharon Rocha. On the morning of December 24, 2002, Christmas Eve, Laci was at home while Scott Peterson told family members he planned to go fishing at the Berkeley Marina, approximately 90 miles away. According to Scott Peterson, Laci planned to spend the day baking cookies and preparing for holiday gatherings. That afternoon, when Laci failed to attend a family Christmas Eve dinner and could not be reached by phone, her stepfather contacted Scott Peterson. Scott returned home and reported Laci missing to the Modesto Police Department at 5:47 p.m. Officers arrived at the Peterson home and began an initial search of the surrounding neighborhood. Mackenzie was found wandering in the street with her leash still attached, suggesting Laci may have taken the dog for a walk earlier in the day. Inside the home, there were no signs of forced entry or struggle. News of Laci Peterson's disappearance spread quickly through Modesto and beyond. Her pregnancy made the case especially urgent, and within days it became a national story. Volunteers organized searches, distributed flyers, and combed nearby parks and waterways. Candlelight vigils were held as residents prayed for Laci and her unborn son's safe return. Law enforcement classified the case as a missing persons investigation and worked to reconstruct Laci's final known movements. Detectives interviewed family members, neighbors, and anyone who might have seen her that day. At this stage, there was no physical evidence of a crime, only a young woman who had vanished without explanation. What began as a routine holiday morning had become a mystery that would captivate the nation and transform a family's Christmas into the beginning of a long and painful search for answers. In the days leading up to December 24, 2002, Laci Peterson was nearing the end of her pregnancy. Her due date was February 10, 2003, but doctors had advised her to limit physical activity because of dizziness and fatigue. Despite this, she remained active in holiday preparations and maintained frequent contact with her family. On December 23rd, Laci attended a hair appointment and later visited her sister, Amy Rocha. According to family members, Laci discussed plans for Christmas Eve, including baking cookies and preparing a basket of gifts for her mother, Sharon Rocha. That evening, she spoke with her mother by phone and confirmed she would bring the basket over the next day. Scott Peterson later told police that he woke up around 9:30 a.m. on Christmas Eve. He said Laci was watching television and planned to mop the floors and bake cookies. Scott reported that he left the house around 9:30 to 9:45 a.m. to drive to the Berkeley Marina to fish for sturgeon. Cell phone records later confirmed Scott's phone traveled west toward the San Francisco Bay Area that morning. He arrived at the Berkeley Marina around 12:54 p.m., according to parking receipts and surveillance footage. He launched his boat and spent several hours fishing alone. Meanwhile, neighbors reported seeing a pregnant woman walking a dog in the neighborhood between approximately 10:15 and 10:45 a.m. Several witnesses later came forward stating they believed the woman resembled Laci Peterson, though none could identify her with absolute certainty. At approximately 10:18 a.m., Scott Peterson's cell phone registered a call made from his home phone to his voicemail, though investigators could not confirm who placed the call. No outgoing calls were made from Laci's phone after that morning. By early afternoon, Sharon Rocha became concerned when she did not hear from Laci about the promised Christmas basket. She attempted to call her daughter several times without success. Later that afternoon, when Laci did not arrive for Christmas Eve dinner, Sharon contacted Scott. Scott returned home at approximately 4:45 p.m. and found Mackenzie in the backyard with her leash still attached. He told police he showered and washed his clothes before going to his in-laws' house. After learning Laci was missing, Scott called 911 at 5:47 p.m. During his call, Scott reported that his wife was 8 months pregnant and had gone missing while walking the dog. Police arrived shortly after and began questioning Scott and searching the home and surrounding area. Investigators later examined Scott Peterson's statements about his activities that day and compared them to physical evidence and witness reports. The timeline of events from that morning became central to the case, as detectives worked to determine Laci's last confirmed sighting and movements. By nightfall on Christmas Eve, Laci Peterson's disappearance had shifted from a family concern to an active police investigation, with officers treating every detail of the day as potentially critical to understanding what had happened. Following Laci Peterson's disappearance on December 24, 2002, the Modesto Police Department launched an extensive search effort. Officers, firefighters, and volunteers combed nearby neighborhoods, parks, and drainage areas. Search dogs were brought in, and aerial searches were conducted over surrounding farmland and waterways. Within days, the case drew national attention. Media outlets covered the search continuously, and posters bearing Laci's photograph appeared across California. Her family held press conferences, urging anyone with information to come forward. The fact that Laci was 8 months pregnant intensified public concern and added urgency to the search. Despite widespread efforts, no confirmed sightings of Laci were established. After the morning of December 24th, investigators expanded their focus to the San Francisco Bay, after learning that Scott Peterson had traveled to the Berkeley Marina that same day. Boats and divers searched the bay and shoreline areas in late December and early January, but no trace of Laci or her unborn son was found. For weeks, the investigation remained classified as a missing persons case. Vigils were held in Modesto, and thousands of volunteers participated in organized searches. Law enforcement maintained that they were following all leads, but did not publicly identify any suspects during the early stages. On April 13, 2003, nearly 4 months after Laci disappeared, a passerby discovered human remains along the shoreline of the San Francisco Bay near Point Isabel Regional Shoreline in Richmond, California. The following day, additional remains were found in the same area. The remains were identified through forensic testing as those of Laci Peterson and her unborn son, Connor. Laci's body was found without her head, arms, or legs due to advanced decomposition and exposure to water. Connor's remains were located separately nearby. An autopsy was conducted by the Contra Costa County coroner. Due to the condition of the remains, the exact cause of death could not be determined. The coroner reported that Laci had been in the water for several months. A length of tape was found on Laci's torso, but investigators could not establish how or when it had been applied. No definitive evidence of trauma could be identified. The discovery of the bodies transformed the case from a missing person investigation into a homicide inquiry. Law enforcement publicly confirmed that Laci and Connor were victims of a crime. News of the recovery of the remains devastated Laci's family and shocked the nation. What had begun as a hopeful search for a missing pregnant woman now became a confirmed double homicide. Memorial services were held in Modesto as family members mourned the loss of Laci and the child she never had the chance to raise. After the recovery of Laci Peterson and her unborn son in April 2003, investigators intensified their focus on Scott Peterson's movements and behavior in the days before and after December 24, 2002. Detectives reviewed phone records, financial transactions, witness statements, and physical evidence collected from the Peterson home and Scott's vehicle. One major development in the investigation was the discovery that Scott Peterson had been involved in an extramarital relationship with a woman named Amber Frey. Frey came forward to police in January 2003 after recognizing Scott's photograph in the news. She told investigators that Scott had introduced himself as a widower and claimed he had lost his wife before meeting her. Their conversations had continued throughout December, including on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. Police recorded multiple phone calls between Scott and Frey, some of which occurred while Scott attended candlelight vigils for Laci. These recordings later became part of the prosecution's evidence, demonstrating that Scott maintained the false story that he had lost his wife prior to Laci's disappearance. Investigators also focused on Scott Peterson's trip to the Berkeley Marina. Receipts and parking stubs confirmed his presence there on December 24th. Witnesses recalled seeing him alone at the dock. Authorities noted that the bodies of Laci and Connor were eventually found in the same general area of the bay where Scott had been fishing. A search of Scott Peterson's warehouse revealed a small fishing boat and homemade anchors made of cement. Evidence showed that at least one anchor had been used, while others remained in storage. Prosecutors later argued that the anchors were intended to weigh down Laci's body, though Scott maintained they were for personal fishing use. In the months following Laci's disappearance, Scott was placed under continuous police surveillance. Investigators documented changes in his appearance, including dyed hair and the presence of large amounts of cash and camping supplies in his vehicle. On April 18, 2003, Scott Peterson was arrested near San Diego, close to the Mexican border. At the time of his arrest, Scott had approximately $15,000 in cash, multiple cell phones, survival equipment, and his brother's identification. Authorities stated these items raised concerns that he intended to flee. Scott's family later said he was planning to play golf and was not attempting to escape the country. Scott Peterson was formally charged with 2 counts of murder, one for Laci Peterson and one for their unborn son, Connor. Prosecutors alleged that Laci had been killed in their home and her body transported to the San Francisco Bay. The defense maintained that Scott was innocent and that Laci had been abducted while walking the dog. The trial of Scott Peterson began in June 2004 in Redwood City after the case was moved due to intense publicity. Prosecutors presented a circumstantial case, highlighting Peterson's affair with Amber Frey, recorded phone calls, and his fishing trip to the Berkeley Marina on the day Laci disappeared. They argued that Laci and her unborn son, Connor, were killed and that their bodies were later disposed of in San Francisco Bay. The defense maintained that the evidence did not prove murder and suggested Laci was abducted while walking the dog. After months of testimony, the jury reached a verdict on November 12, 2004. Scott Peterson was found guilty of first-degree murder for Laci and second-degree murder for Connor. He was sentenced to death in December 2004. In 2020, the California Supreme Court overturned the death sentence because of jury selection errors while upholding the convictions. In 2021, Peterson was resentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. If this story mattered to you, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more true documentary stories.